delighted to welcome to the latest version of More 360, the legend that is Mark Denton. As I understand it, Mark started in the advertising industry in 1975. By 1988, was a partner in his own agency, then decided to wander off and be a director, first in combination with Chris Palmer, then on his own. He's run his own production company, Therapy, with Malcolm Venville, and still today has his own company, Coyy Communications. So you've pretty much done everything, Mark, without wishing to embarrass you. So what was the kind of desire to go back in and be an intern in St. Luke's?
I think I started the new year not only 65 years old, but a little bit confused. Nothing to do with my age. It was, I've gone through Christmas, fast forwarding through the adverts on the telly. Now, I'm meant to like advertising, and I thought, why do I keep fast forwarding the adverts and do everything I can to avoid them? So I'm online, same as everyone else. We're on YouTube or whatever, and we're all looking at the right-hand corner. Skip the ad in 3, 2, 1. I don't know what's going on ad-wise. I just want to skip it. And I thought, well, when I get into cabs, cab drivers they really don't want to know when they say, here, what do you do? I say, well, I'm in advertising. They don't want to have a chat like they used to. Because they used to say, oh, did you do that one with the bouncing bomb, Carlin Black Label? Which I didn't. But no one wants to talk about it anymore. We're more unpopular than estate agents now. So I thought maybe I should try to find out how advertising works now.
And so what did you find out? How does it work, and what is different from 40 years ago?
Well, yeah, it's 35 years since I was inside an agency. It's all a lot more collaborative, for want of a better word. And I went to St. Luke's, and I loved going to St. Luke's. And it was very, very, very kind of them to invite me in. And I turned up with them, because I'm not very tech savvy. I turned up with a bunch of magic markers and a layout pad, because I thought that's how I used to get my ideas across in the old days. I'll see if it still works. I thought it was a real good experiment to be me as I was all those years ago in a modern agency. And they seem very happy there. They're doing some good work, work that I recognise from the telly when I don't fast forward it. But there is this new collaboration, which means lots of meetings talking about work rather than doing it. There's a new system. There's loads of chat going on, and lots of ideas on the table. Whereas we used to pick one and punt for one.
So I'm going to say, so does collaboration take the edge away, Mark? Is that what you had working on your own?
There was what you used to get was ownership. So if you were a creative, you used to own the work that you worked on, and you used to guard it and present it at the right time. And if someone wanted to chip the corners off it and make it not quite as good as part of the process, you'd defend it. But with the new collaboration, there's more agreement, but, there's not, as we know, there's not a lot of statues to committees.
But that presumably makes it more homogenous, right? Which is your point about the fact that it isn't as interesting because actually all the really sharp edges have been roughed off it.
Yeah. And it's not just St. Luke's working like that. And like I say, despite that way of working, St. Luke's have done some famous work. So, it hasn't got in the way of them doing really good work. But when you watch the telly, knowing that system is right across advertising now. I know this from being on a film set as a director. I don't get protected from all the small client comments. And sometimes I find the client standing next to me, getting involved and telling me to move things around. That's different from 20 or 30 years ago, where I used to be protected by at least two layers of people that just let me get on with my job. So creatives generally, again, across the board, this is not just to do with my internship and seeing it there. Across the board, creatives have been marginalised a bit. And I think a lot of advertising agencies have forgotten what they're selling, because what they actually sell to clients is creativity. They haven't got anything else.
No. So if there was one thing that you could put back into the agency of today from the agency of 35 years ago, what would it be?
Well, I think it's a bit tough for me to ask. If you'd asked me that before I did the internship, then that would have been a more straightforward answer. But I did, I actually really enjoyed being there, and there were some aspects of the collaboration that I really liked. But I think when you've got a gang of people who can get involved in stuff, you've got to have an orchestra leader. So I would keep the collaboration, but know that the person with the stick is the one that needs to guide it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the role is being in the back banging a triangle, and sometimes you're at the front waving the stick about. And it's really knowing who to listen to. Because if everyone is pleased at every stage, client included, then chances are it's bland enough not to upset anyone. And if it's bland enough not to upset anyone, it's not good enough to watch, and you end up fast forwarding it. It turns into wallpaper. So I'd keep lots of aspects of the way things work now. Despite the fact I'm not very technical, the technology is great now. We're having this chat now. This is going to be broadcast at some point. You couldn't do that in the old days. The tools that we got at our disposal have never been better. I can set a bit of type, or I can get someone else to set a bit of type for me, manipulate a photograph, take a photograph that's good enough quality from my phone, or film a commercial from my phone. You couldn't do that stuff before, but it's almost like we've got these tools and we're not allowed to use them in a way that the public would really, really embrace. Because generally they're doing more entertaining stuff themselves on TikTok.
True. It's kind of hard to escape, Mark, that you're a white man of a certain age, right? In a world where it's turning against white men of a certain age. So, if they did re-engage you, what would you add to the St. Luke's or other agencies of today?
Well, there's no doubt about it. See, if you look around in the industry, there's not a lot of black men of a certain age either. So I don't think. I think the factor that probably works against me is my age. The fact that I'm a man as well. I've got all the relatively unfashionable boxes ticked against me, and I think, well, to keep my profile up, if you like, and keep actively engaged, I've just got to pedal a bit harder, which is hard with my knees now.
Yeah.
But
there was a quote I read somewhere that said that one of the head guys at St. Luke said actually what they needed was a kind of brain in a box.
Yeah.
And do you think that actually is something that would add value to what they're doing?
Look, I think St. Luke's aside, because they're just an example,
Yeah,
a very good example of a good agency now. But it's the way it works across the board. I think that most agencies would benefit from having an in-house senior person, whether it's a man, a woman, or whatever, but someone who's just been there and done it in a different age. Because there's, at 65, there ain't a lot of people of my generation anywhere near any creative departments. And even though lots of senior people were brought in as freelancers, they do their freelance gig and they go away. They if they were parked in a corner in an agency, then you could have a bit of cross-pollination between the youngsters and the old gits like me, or gitesses like senior people who can actually say, slow down a bit. don't put so many ideas on the table. There's got to be a selection now. Clients are used to that, but just be a bit more selective about what's put forward. And remember, we've got to entertain the audience, otherwise they won't be interested in the message.
Yeah. And is there no process where that happens? It's kind of really interesting, right? So is there no kind of logical way that experienced people like you hand down ideas, or do new people just come in with new ideas and they just kind of away they go?
Well, I think there's no doubt about it. There's loads of people pouring in at the bottom. Just from I'm sure you're aware of this from a financial point of view. They're cheaper than old people. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was told very early on, back in the 70s, this is a young person's business that you're entering. So the fact that I'm anywhere near it now is against the odds. So there's loads of youngsters, and there's and a lot of the people in the top jobs, the CCOs, the ECDs, and all the rest of it, are still too young to remember what it was like last century. So you've got a lot of what I would call young people. They might be middle-aged, but they're young people in the top jobs, and they're so busy. They go from there's so many meetings. They go from one meeting to another. So where's the time for anyone to pass that old knowledge across? And I'm not trying to pretend I'm some kind of sage or whatever, but when I started off as a junior art director, there was a senior art director who would say, "Yeah, come on, I'm doing a car shoot. Come on the shoot." And he'd take me along, and then I'd learn, they're putting that bit of black cloth down because of the reflections in the side of the car. And then the transparencies would come back, and he'd take me down to the production department, and he'd get a chinograph and mark up the transparencies. And I learned how to do it because it was passed on by the people above me. But now they're kept so busy because there's a requirement for so many different ideas on the table. They're kept busy. There's no senior, certainly no one from my era around, who can just say, "Look, just slow down a bit. I'll help you with that." See, I know this from being a director. I get lots of scripts that are unfinished to look at, and they haven't timed them. I was taught very early on, don't have more than 60 words of dialogue for a 30-second script. Get a stopwatch on your script before you present it to the creative director. Now I get 60-second scripts that need to work in 30 seconds. So they haven't gone on a regular basis. So they obviously haven't gone through that apprenticeship, and that's missing.
Mark, we could talk forever, and it's truly fascinating.
Is it over yet?
Yeah. It was an absolutely unique insight and a joy to talk to you. Thank you, Mark Denton.
Oh, you're more than welcome.